Okay, guys, let's go ahead and get started with the second portion of what we do. I appreciated so much what happened this morning. That was fantastic. We're going to have two speakers this afternoon. Michael Clary is up first. Michael is the pastor of Christ the King, which is meeting in Clifton. I have enjoyed getting to know Michael, even if he is a thundering bird guy from West Virginia, and I appreciate that. And then we're going to hear from Greg Birdwell, that is at Providence Bible Fellowship. Greg's dad. I've gotten to know Greg a little bit. I got to know his dad. His dad is our kind of business professional guy that is going to work with us as well. So, Michael, if you would come on up and talk to us, we'll go ahead and get started. Doug, we're doing okay? I appreciate Doug Sipsey doing our recording for us and keeping that going this afternoon. Thank you, Michael. Take it out.
All right, guys. I'm going to lift this up a bit. Probably just scream if we probably just sit in a little circle and holler. That may be easier. All right. So, just introduce myself. My name is Michael Clary. I'm a pastor of Christ the King Church in Clifton, uptown. I moved to Cincinnati in 2008, and we started a core group with just a handful of folks, and then about 18 months later, we launched the church in 2010. I think, is there a picture? I sent a picture in earlier today that's got a picture of my family. If it shows up there, you can see it. But, my wife, Laura, we've been married for 21 years. We have 4 kids. The oldest is a girl. She's 15. She's learning to drive now. So this is white knuckle time for mom and dad as we're in the car trying to teach her to drive. But 15, 14, 12, and 10 are the kids' ages. Anyway, we launched our church in January 2010, and January of 2020, last year, celebrated our 10-year anniversary, and then went on to have the most easy and delightful ride of a ministry year as you can imagine. Totally kidding. The whole world fell apart. Well, I've been asked to talk to you guys about training lay elders, lay pastors in your church. So here's what I want to do. I want to be as practically helpful as I can be. So I've got some tool, like a method that I'd like to share with you. What I want to do is tell you what we do at Christ the King, and if there are maybe nuggets of things that will be beneficial to you, then well, there you go. Then I'll pass out I've got some couple things I'll hand out to you as well. So I'll tell you what we do at Christ the King and why, and then hopefully you'll be able to make use of this in your context. Actually, I have my Bible sitting on my chair right there, so I'll look up the scripture on my phone here. I'll read to you a text from Ephesians 4:11. It says this: "And he gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the shepherds and teachers, to equip the saints for the work of ministry, for building up the body of Christ, until we all attain to the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to mature manhood, to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ, so that we may no longer be children, tossed to and fro by the waves and carried about by every wind of doctrine, by human cunning, by craftiness and deceitful schemes." This text tells us that leaders at the church are gifts. It says God gave these things to the church, and the things that God gave, the gifts to the church, are different leaders: apostles, prophets, evangelists, shepherds, teachers, and so forth. So the people, the leadership of the church, are given to the church for these purposes. And you see these purposes mentioned here. Verse 12, they build up the body. Verse 13, they promote unity in the body. They help people to know Jesus. They help the church to become more mature, to mature manhood, it says. Verse 14, it helps the leaders help the church be more doctrinally stable. And also the church, they help the church to be less vulnerable to deceitful schemes, deception, things like that. So the lay elders, lay leaders can help in all of these ways. They serve the church, benefit the church by not being paid staff members, but they are people who love the church. They serve the church by devoting their time and energy to doing all of these things. I was at a pastor's conference like this several years ago, and I remember watching through this meeting. There was the senior pastor was the guy that greeted you at the door when you came in, and he was the guy that had the refreshments set out and prepared. And then he came up to the microphone and he emceed the meeting. And then, at one point, there was somebody else that was preaching that night, and there was an issue with the sounds, and he ran up to the sound booth and he was running the sound and then dealing with the slides. And I was thinking, this man is, he's running himself to death, and he doesn't have other people that are working with him. And so this man that's called by God to shepherd the people of God is having to be a sound tech and a janitor and a refreshment giver and that sort of thing. And I just thought, he would really benefit from having other people that can serve in ministry with him. And so by building up other leaders, we can help serve the church, and other people can use their gifts in various ways. Of course, the text about one body, many parts. So what I want to share with you here in this method, I use the word elder and pastor interchangeably, and what we're talking about is building, establishing lay elders, lay pastors. So I use those words interchangeably. So just keep that in mind as I go through these things. I've got 5 steps. 5 steps of things that you can do to build lay eldership in your church. First thing to do is define who an elder is and what an elder does. Define who an elder is and what an elder does. So, my background, the church that I was part of before I went into ministry, they had a deacon board, and the deacons were what I would now call elders, because they function as the authoritative decision-making body of the church. So if you don't define the terms, you want to know what it is you mean by elder, know what an elder does, know who an elder is. The Bible gives us general principles for the character, the qualifications of eldership. You see those in Titus, 1 Timothy. But in your church context, you'll still need to contextualize that. You'll need to say, what does above reproach mean for my people, in my context, my situation here? What are these different qualifications? Like, how will you assess that, train that? So from my experience, the clearer that you can be, the better. So if you're defining who an elder is and explicitly what you want an elder to do, then what you're doing is you're giving guardrails and parameters that the men that you would recruit into eldership, they can work with. So for example, potential elders that you might have, they're going to bring their own baggage with them. So if you have somebody that came from a prior church when the elder was a board, like they sit in the boardroom and they make decisions and that's all they do, if that's what they think, if that's what they've seen before, then that's what they'll bring with them. At my church at Christ the King, we define elder, elders have the decision-making authority, but we define elders by the work they do amongst the people. So our elders are the shepherds that are shepherding the flock. They are with people, they know people, they're building the relationships, they're doing premarital counseling, they're doing conflict resolution, things like that. So what I did is I wrote up a role description, and I'll pass this out to you here in a second. This role description spells out explicitly what the elders do and who they are. And this frees my elders to know where are they exercising their authority, where are they exercising their oversight. So for example, we have paid and unpaid elders. So our paid elders, they Plus, we pay them to do other things. So all of the elders, paid and unpaid, they have a core job description that is shepherding people. And then we pay them to do other things, and the areas that they're paid for, that's where they exercise a particular unique authority. So if I have a lay elder that doesn't like a song that we sang on Sunday, he doesn't have authority to just go tell our worship pastor, hey, you can't sing that song anymore. It's like, well, the worship pastor, he has authority there. So it's not just like people can, if you have 6, 7 elders, it's not like they're just out and about telling people what to do all the time, because their authority is scoped and defined very clearly for them. Let me just pass this out to you. Can somebody give me a hand passing these out? Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. So this is something I wrote for my church in my context. And if you wanted to recruit and train lay elders in your context, you could write up something similar. And guys that have coached through this, that's what they've done. They rewrote something that would work for them. So I'll walk through this here. The purpose of the document is, I'm looking at the first paragraph under the scripture. The purpose of the document is to define the calling and responsibility of every elder of Christ the King Church. The Apostle Paul says that every elder must watch his life and doctrine closely. In other words, he must first exemplify in his own life the truth that he calls others to. So in Christ the King Church, every elder, whether they're paid or unpaid, should relentlessly pursue our mission to know, love, and obey Jesus as Lord over all of life. And the specific pastoral care duties of our elders can be summarized with the 4 words: know, feed, lead, and protect. So I believe that language came from Alexander Stroud's book. Do you know, Greg? Is it Alexander Stroud did this? Or there was a 912. I think they borrowed it from Stroud. Is Michael Graham, I think, maybe also did. Okay. No, feed, lead, and protect. I think Alexander Stroud wrote a book, Biblical Eldership, and if that's the one I'm thinking of, he breaks it down into these 4 buckets of duty that a biblical elder does. A very scripturally researched book. And so what I did is I took the concepts from that book, and I wrote it into a job description here. So to know the sheep, our elders are expected to pray for our church members and attenders regularly, to know the members that are in their small group, to be present attending the weekly gathering, to watch for issues in the church that require attention, to pursue church members who stop attending the church or fall into temptation and sin, and to prepare for and attend regular elder meetings. So that's part of knowing the people. That's a lot of the people work. Feed the sheep. There's the first thing is prayer again. Pray that our members will know God's word and grow in doctrine. They'll personally continue to read and learn the scriptures. They'll maintain the solid grasp of what we call our statement of faith, so our doctrinal statement. They'll learn that, have a solid grasp of it, and that they will patiently and biblically teach, reprove, rebuke, and exhort others as needed. So these men are sort of deputized to be amongst the people of our church, and they have authority to speak on these matters. They know our statement of faith, and as issues arise, if they need to get involved in a situation, if they need to rebuke somebody or correct somebody in sin, they're able to do that with the authority of the church, on behalf of the church, with the church's authority. So it's something where they are exercising oversight, they're exercising pastoral care and authority among people that, and doing so with the weight of the church behind them. Yeah?
So are you excluding from that, like, the ability to stand and teach, and is that not necessarily a requirement, like, in a setting like this?
Yeah, so he's asking, does it require teaching? There's not a preaching requirement. It is, some guys are great preachers. Some guys are much more effective, like teaching in a one-on-one discipleship setting or in a small group. So there's not a requirement that they would preach, but I ask them all to, usually once a year at least. Some guys maybe more than that.
Okay.
Yeah. The next one is lead the sheep. So pray for our church members to know, love, and obey Jesus as Lord over all of life. You lead by example, so you model Christ-like behavior and conduct. Mediate conflict with gentleness, patience, firmness. Participate on a shared leadership team for groups. So that's the way our group structure is. We'll have multiple small groups that have one pastor that oversees 3 or 4 of our small groups. Provide pastoral care for your city group and additional groups as assigned, including praying for the sick, hospital visits, premarital counseling. Champion the value of church membership to non-members. Attend regular member meetings and perform additional leadership duties as assigned. I'll mention that. That's at the end of this document. So no fee, lead, and then if you turn a page over, protect the sheep. This is a big one because the protecting is where the work of eldership can be most rigorous. It's where their skill can really be most valuable. So pray for God's victory and protection against spiritual attack over our members. Defend the doctrines of our church against false teaching, both inside and outside the flock. Notify other elders as significant issues of pastoral care arise. So let's say there's a case of adultery or a case of some other significant sin. We bring other guys in like, hey, I need to talk about this. They can either report it to all the elders just for information. A lot of times it's more like just don't go alone. A 2x2 mentality. It's like, hey, I've got a really thorny issue here I need to deal with, and we bring other guys in to help you. Notify other elders if any member leaves the church for any reason. And we always have a handful of people coming and going, as we all do. So it's like we want to know who are the flock in our sheepfold right now. I think you mentioned this earlier, that you keep pretty accurate records. You want to know who's your flock. And so that's important. As people leave, if the church grows and you don't exactly, especially during COVID, it's like, has so-and-so left, haven't seen them, or are they watching a live stream, what are they doing? It helps us to know, keep a good sense of who's around. And maintain appropriate discretion and confidentiality regarding the personal lives of our members. No fee, lead, protect. Those 4 buckets are the core requirements, core responsibilities of every single elder of our church. And we train on this, we ask guys to do it. And whether you're paid or unpaid, everybody has to do all of those things. Now, this additional leadership duties, and I think this gets at what you were asking a minute ago. There are some things that require elder level authority and oversight, but they're not necessarily biblical requirements of an elder. So I think a good example of this is budget. You want your elders to approve your budget because how your church spends money, you're accountable for that. So that's a top level leadership sort of decision. I have probably at least one elder will just say, I don't care about budget, so I don't get into that. But it's like, well, he's not the kind of guy, and it's like the Bible doesn't require an elder to be able to manage, a church budget or to be a bean counting sort of guy. So some people will take an additional role to help oversee our budget. So have an elder that does all of these things, and will say, hey, Elder Smith, we're going to ask you also to take on this additional responsibility that needs elder level oversight. Can you help write our budget? Can you help kind of get involved in the numbers and talk to the different ministry leaders that need money and that sort of thing? So some of the examples that we call on people to perform in addition to the regular elder duties is conduct member interviews. Actually, every elder does that, but it's not necessarily required. But we ask every elder does that currently, to examine and affirm potential new elders as needed, lead in various ways at the Sunday gathering, including announcements, prayers, liturgy, communion, and or preaching. Teach a discipleship class, help teach a new member class, facilitate discussion, or teach at our pastor school or lead a cohort. Provide premarital counseling, marriage counseling, or other types of pastoral care. Oversee specific ministries or projects such as prayer, outreach, recovery group, discipleship group. Perform special services such as baptisms, weddings, funerals, and organizational consultation and assistance such as business, finance, budget, personnel, facility maintenance, real estate, relocation. So right now our church is considering purchasing a property, and your elders need to take the lead on that decision. But a lot of guys they just have very little interest. We have other guys that have the skills and they know what they're doing. So we asked those guys, hey, when it comes to this businessy type stuff, can you help us make this decision and research options and so forth? The reason why I put this together is because I saw over time a thing developing to where we had a model of eldership that didn't scale. So we had initially, when I was just planting a church, it was me and a buddy of mine we were the two elders, and everything from pastoral care to who's going to run the Sam's and pick up, kids' snacks or whatever. It's like we were just doing everything. But we needed something that would help a division of labor to where some of the business stuff and some of the shepherding stuff would go to the right people to protect our time to do the work of the ministry. Especially Acts 6, preaching and prayer are the two priorities. So we still had things that needed that sort of elder oversight. But we didn't have a system to say some of these things are elder level inputs needed, and other things aren't. And so what happened is during our elder meetings, we were dealing with all kinds of business stuff. And then it's like, we got 10 minutes left. What do we have shepherding? It's like, so-and-so their marriage is on the rocks and maybe getting a divorce, and this kid's strung out on drugs. We're like, we don't have time to talk about the sheep. We don't have time to talk about the flock. What is going on here? So having this here, it's like that forces us to say our time is spent on people. Our elder meetings, we spend a lot of time talking about people, caring for people, and deploying our elders to shepherd them. And then we have particular people, as they have capacity and skill, can help with some of the business-related stuff, so that way all of our elders are not being burdened with business-related things. Step 1, define who an elder is and what an elder does. The rest of these I can move through a little bit more quickly. So the second thing that I did is to break down essential doctrinal beliefs, character qualities, and leadership skills into core competencies. So it's like, I try to picture, and I'm sure all of you guys have in your minds, like if you could have a lay leader, a lay elder, a lay pastor that could come alongside with you and work in the ministry and could just be kind of the men holding Moses' hands in the air, somebody that could just work with you and be just this godsend, what would they be like? What kind of man would it be that would help you in that way? And it's like, that would probably fit the qualifications of an elder. And they're also going to have some particular skills that would compensate for areas where you're not as strong. So, in our context, I wrote down doctrinal beliefs, character qualities, and leadership skills that would best fit what we need in our context. So I thought of what a finished product would look like, this sort of dream man that I would want, and that I reverse engineer and broke it down into a few core competencies, and then I would develop a training resource around those competencies. So I have another thing I'll hand out. You guys helped me a second ago. You know what I mean? So this is I printed fewer of these, but I think they're still enough. Thank you again. So I didn't just create this myself. I took a template from Acts 29, Church Planting Network, the way that they assess church planters. So church planting, Mark, I'm sure you've and Travis, there are competencies or things that they assess on, and I was like, okay, I'm looking for a church planter so a church planter would be a pastor, but doesn't necessarily need all the church planting gifts, but he does need pastoral gifts. And so I would kind of strip away the entrepreneurial church planting gifts, some of those things, and then put in other things that I needed in my own context. There were 12 of them that I ended up with once I did my own adaptation. And each of these, so you can see there's 12 of them. Just to give you an example, the first one, spiritual vitality, there's a description of that. That basically means this is a man who walks with Jesus. He's got a thriving relationship with Jesus. So whenever I meet with these guys once a month, and then we'll say, okay, this month, our topic is spiritual vitality. They have this syllabus, so they've already seen the assignments that go along with it, and they will have read the book that goes along with it. So it's like, okay, you've read the book. I'll assign one of the guys to prepare a devotion on the text, and we go through the pastoral epistles each month. So 1 Timothy, you see the text laid out there. I'll spend the first 45 minutes talking about some aspect of church life, just a practical thing that's just the way we do ministry. So I'll discuss an aspect of our vision, or we'll talk about our ministry plan, or we talk about our sexuality statement, or wedding policy, or whatever. But that's 45 minutes. And then I have year 1 and year 2, and I'll talk about the timing in a second. I have them choose a book. And some guys they don't have a lot of time to read these big, thick theological books. So I pick a book, and one guy told me, hey, I'm always going to read the shortest book. And I'm like, that's fine, because I picked the books. You're getting good content. I'll pick like the 9 Marks books, the ones that are like, 75 pages or something. But they're getting exposure to the competency that I want them to develop. And then they'll fill out a little form that I ask them to fill out, just to say, what was the key takeaway? And then I'll meet them for like 2.5 hours. It's once a month on a third Monday of every month. 2.5 hours, we'll have a meal, and then we'll do this meeting. And then we'll have a theological discussion. So I'll ask a question and just kind of get the conversation going. And most of these months, there's a case study. So I'll take something that I've experienced in my own pastoral experience that relates to this competency. So it's let me see one of these competencies here, or one of the case studies. Like the second paper, Marriage, Family, and Household Life. There's a case study like a man has a porn addiction. He's struggled for years without seeing victory. His wife is crushed. They haven't had sex in years. The relationship is distant and cold, and he speaks of God's abundant grace. She thinks it's time for a divorce. Okay, you're a lay pastor, what do you do? And guys talk about it. It's a thorny issue, with a lot of difficulty, and it's a chance to let these guys kind of process a difficult situation together. And I can speak into how I handle it. So we do this once a month, and the way that this is designed is that it's an ongoing. It's not like, okay, here's your enrollment date, here's your graduation date. That's not the model. The model is this thing is always on repeat. And so I have guys, I'll invite them in, and then, could be like, 8, 9 months, I'm like, this guy seems ready, that guy seems ready, and I'll move them into a formal assessment process. But I've also got some younger guys, they're still in seminary, or they're just kind of learning their way through it. And those guys may take a slower approach, and I'm like, well, go through a couple of years of this, and then we'll talk, and just kind of see where you are. You may need a few more years after that. So I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me just, the third step, invite key men to consider going through the training regimen. So I've got about 10 guys going through it with me right now. I expect less than half of them to actually become elders. And for those that don't become elders, I just tell them, hey, you're getting great discipleship, great brotherhood, good time with other guys, you'll enjoy the development. And there's zero expectation that you'll become an elder, and it's more likely that you will not be, and that's okay. You're not letting me down or anybody, and I just free them from that. But I do want somebody to invite guys in. And then the fourth step is for men that are most ready. I invite them to take another step, so there's a formal assessment that I take them through. And part of that is, thank you, part of that is they join us for our elder meetings. And And so the elder meetings, it's more of a, we talk about things more confidentially, and there's a higher threshold of trust that needs to be built for that. So some men will join us into that, into our elder meetings. And then step 5, the last one. For men who are ready to become elders, I'll have them go through that final assessment process, which includes self-assessment, a eldership questionnaire, an announcement to the church where they have 60 days to say, hey, I don't like this guy, he freaks me out, or whatever. So there's a way for church to kind of weigh in, so the church is saying, hey, if there's a problem. And then it ends with a formal installation where we have the members come up, they lay hands on the man, and then at that time it's okay, he's now your elder. And that means that the things that the scriptures say about elders now apply to this man. So you need to submit to his authority, you need to follow his lead, and he is now accountable to God for you and your soul. So that's, I am out of time. So that's a sketch of our process. Last thing I'll say is that I'm happy to, if any of you guys have any questions you'd like to, hear some more, I'm happy to, to talk with you through it. My email address, probably the easiest way to reach me, it's Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, at ctkcincy.com, ctkcincy.com, which is my first name, and the email address. And I'd be happy to give you a hand with that. So, thanks a lot for your time and attention, guys, and if you want to chat afterwards, I'd be happy to do that.